The morning sun rose over the sprawling military base, cutting through the early mist like a blade. Its rays glinted off helmets, rifles, and the polished insignias of the Marines lined up for inspection. The air buzzed with the low hum of conversation, the stomping of boots on concrete, and the distant rumble of vehicles preparing for drills. Among them, Sergeant Harper moved silently, her presence unassuming yet impossible to ignore. Her olive-green uniform clung to her frame, well-fitted but worn in all the right places, proof of years of discipline and countless missions. She adjusted the strap of her rucksack and scanned the grounds, noting every detail with precision. Her eyes flicked from the obstacle course in the distance to the training stairs at the far end of the base, massive, daunting, and unforgiving. Rumors had been circulating for days that today's drill would test not only physical strength but mental endurance as well. Some of the younger Marines were visibly nervous, whispering among themselves about what might await them. Harper didn't join in. She never did. She had learned early in her career that observation, preparation, and focus mattered far more than chatter or bravado. The base was alive in a way outsiders could never fully understand. Marines moved with purpose, their boots striking the ground in almost rhythmic precision. Officers barked orders, recruits scrambled to comply. Harper paused for a moment, letting the sounds wash over her, the clatter of rifles being checked, the muted groans of someone struggling with gear, the occasional burst of laughter. Camaraderie, discipline, tension, and quiet competition, all interwoven into the life of a Marine. To an outsider, it might seem chaotic, but Harper knew better. This was the rhythm of readiness, the heartbeat of a force trained to act under pressure. She moved past a group of young recruits practicing maneuvers, their faces flushed with exertion. One tripped over a low hurdle, muttering a curse under his breath, and Harper's gaze met his for a fleeting second. There was no mockery, no reprimand, just a quiet acknowledgement, a subtle reminder that every step mattered. He straightened, squared his shoulders, and continued. That brief exchange, unnoticed by the others, captured her approach to leadership. She didn't need to shout to command respect. Her competence, discipline, and presence did that far more effectively. Harper stopped at the base of the 200-step training staircase, her eyes traveling upward, following each step as though counting them in her mind. She had climbed these stairs countless times before, each ascent a test of endurance, but today there was a sense of anticipation in the air. Something felt different. A subtle tension prickled at the edge of her awareness, a whisper of the challenges to come. She tightened her gloves and adjusted her boots, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settle over her shoulders. Around her, Marines joked and challenged one another, testing stamina, exchanging tips, and bracing for the exercises ahead. Harper's focus never wavered. She observed the nuances of body language, the clenched fists of a nervous recruit, the controlled breathing of a seasoned corporal, the subtle exchange of nods between friends signaling readiness. Every detail mattered. In a split second, these small cues could determine whether someone triumphed or faltered. And then she heard it, a distant shout piercing through the morning bustle. It was sharp, urgent, and tinged with fear. Harper's head snapped toward the sound and her instincts flared. She didn't hesitate. Training or not, drill or not, she knew that wherever that cry came from, action would be required. Harper had always been quick to assess, quicker to move. Today, like so many days before, she would be the one to step forward when others froze. As the base seemed to hold its collective breath, Harper took a deep, measured breath herself, feeling the energy of the Marines around her. The quiet before the storm settled over her. She adjusted her posture, squared her shoulders, and prepared to move, ready to face whatever challenge awaited at the top of those daunting stairs. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Strength, courage, and the unspoken bond of the Corps would guide her. And unbeknownst to everyone watching, a single act of heroism was about to begin, one that would ripple through the base and change the lives of hundreds forever. The distant shout echoed again, sharper this time, slicing through the rhythmic hum of the base. Harper's instincts flared instantly. She scanned the training grounds, eyes narrowing. Her gaze landed on Private Daniels, a young Marine with more enthusiasm than experience, lying crumpled halfway up the massive 200-step staircase. His face was pale, sweat streaking the grime on his cheeks, and he clutched his leg with a grimace that spoke of pain and fear. His boots had slid against the concrete, sending him into a near-fatal stumble. Time slowed. Every second counted. Every movement mattered. Marines nearby froze in shock. Some hesitated, unsure whether to climb or wait for officers' orders. But Harper didn't hesitate. She vaulted forward, her boots pounding against the concrete, adrenaline sharpening every sense. She assessed the situation in a heartbeat. Daniels couldn't move on his own. If left, his injuries would worsen and the climb was too treacherous for anyone unprepared. Harper's mind raced, calculating leverage, weight, and balance. She had to act now. She reached him in 2 strides, kneeling beside the young Marine. "I've got you," she said, her voice calm but commanding. There was no time for panic, no space for doubt. Daniel's eyes widened, relief and fear colliding. "Yes, Sergeant, I, he stammered, but Harper shook her head firmly. "I know you can't, that's why I'm here." She lifted her arms, sliding them under his back and shoulders, ready to bear his weight. The morning sun glinted off her helmet, highlighting the determination etched across her features. Harper adjusted her grip, the strain immediate. Daniel's body was heavy and the stairs loomed above like a wall. Every muscle in her body screamed in protest, but she suppressed it. This wasn't about her. It was about him and every Marine who counted on them both. Around them voices rose, some shouting encouragement, others frozen in disbelief. "Go, Sergeant!" someone yelled. Another called out warnings about slipping, tripping, falling. Harper blocked them out, her focus absolute. Step by step, inch by inch, she began the grueling ascent. First few steps were deceptively easy. Daniel's weight shifted slightly, throwing off her balance, and Harper felt the familiar burn in her shoulders, arms, and back. Sweat stung her eyes, dripping down her temples, but she blinked it away. The staircase seemed endless. Each step was a battle against gravity, against exhaustion, against doubt. Yet Harper's resolve never wavered. She remembered every grueling drill, every endurance test, every late-night exercise that had prepared her for this moment. Her training was now a lifeline, each movement precise, deliberate, and unyielding. Halfway up, Daniels whimpered. "I, he gasped, his voice thin and trembling. Harper's jaw tightened. "Yes, you can, you're holding on, I've got you, just trust me." He nodded weakly, gripping her shoulders for support. Around them, a few Marines had begun to climb cautiously alongside, forming a tense escort, but Harper needed no assistance. She moved with singular purpose, each step measured. The top seemed impossibly far, yet she refused to falter, refusing to let exhaustion dictate the outcome. By now, the entire base had stopped to watch. Officers, recruits, and veterans alike formed a living audience to the unfolding heroism. Harper's silhouette, bent under Daniel's weight, climbing step by agonizing step, became a symbol of determination no words could describe. Every breath, every grunt, every careful step reflected a Marine's creed. No one is left behind. Even as pain burned through her body, Harper's eyes never left the top of the staircase. Reaching it was more than a physical goal. It was a mission, a promise, a testament to courage in its rawest form. And still, the climb had only just begun. Every step became agony. Harper's muscles screamed in protest, her shoulders and arms trembling under the weight of Daniel's body. Sweat soaked her uniform, slicking her gloves against his skin, threatening her grip. Yet she didn't falter. One misstep could send him tumbling back down the 200 stairs, undoing everything. The sheer scale of the staircase loomed above her, an endless wall of concrete, each step a silent challenge to her endurance and resolve. Around them, the base had fallen into a stunned hush. Marines watched in disbelief, some frozen mid-step, some cheering softly, but none dared approach. Daniels groaned, his breathing uneven and ragged. I can't, Sergeant," he muttered, voice weak, desperation edging his words. Harper's jaw tightened, not with anger, but with focused determination. "You can," she replied, voice steady, almost gentle. "I've got you, we're making it, step by step, that's all we do." Her eyes never left the steps above. Every fiber of her being screamed in protest, her lungs burned, her legs shook, yet she forced herself upward. This was more than a test of strength. It was a test of will, courage, and heart. The first 100 steps had left Harper's forearms quivering. The second 100 threatened to break her posture. She gritted her teeth, counting silently, each number a mantra. She focused on technique, placing one foot firmly, bending her knees just enough, shifting Daniel's weight to conserve energy, and forcing her back to remain straight. Every motion had to be precise. She had learned long ago that hesitation or sloppy movements could be catastrophic. Every decision in these moments carried the weight of life and death. Halfway up the staircase, Daniel's grip on her shoulders loosened slightly. His face was pale, beads of sweat rolling down, eyes wide with fear and trust in equal measure. I don't think I can make it," he whispered, voice shaking. Harper's lips pressed into a thin line. "You already are, look at you holding on, I won't let go, keep trusting me." Her words were more than encouragement, they were a promise, a lifeline in a storm of exhaustion. Daniels tightened his grip, drawing strength from her unwavering resolve. The climb slowed to a crawl. Each step felt like lifting a ton. Harper's vision blurred at the edges, her breathing harsh and uneven. Her mind flashed through memories of grueling training drills, long runs in the mud, endless obstacle courses. Every bit of preparation, every ache, every failure had led to this moment. Pain became secondary to purpose. Every heartbeat echoed in her ears, syncing with the distant shouts and the pounding boots of Marines watching below. The impossible was happening because she refused to surrender. As she neared the top, the final steps loomed like a wall. Her arms shook violently, her back burned, and her legs threatened to buckle. Daniels groaned, leaning his weight into her shoulder. Harper dug deep, pulling from a reserve of strength she didn't know she had. She focused on each step as if it were a mission objective, ignoring every warning from her body. Inch by painstaking inch, they climbed. And then, finally, the top of the staircase reached for her outstretched hands. With one final surge, Harper pulled Daniels onto the flat ground, collapsing beside him, gasping, every muscle trembling. Silence fell for a heartbeat, then erupted into shocked awe. Marines who had watched in disbelief began shouting, cheering, and rushing toward them. Officers approached, stunned, some reaching instinctively to help, others simply watching, mouths agape. Daniels lay on the ground, safe, breathing heavily but alive. Harper's chest heaved, her vision blurred with sweat and relief. The climb had been more than a feat of strength. It was a testament to courage, to resolve, to the unbreakable bond between Marines. She had done the impossible, and everyone had witnessed it. In that moment, Harper realized something profound. Heroism wasn't about medals, recognition, or ego. It was about action, commitment, and the refusal to leave anyone behind. She had risked everything to save a life, and that decision, made in an instant, had proven that courage could move mountains, or, in this case, conquer 200 brutal stairs. The base would remember this moment for years, and Harper knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. The air at the top of the staircase was thick with disbelief. Harper lay on the ground for a moment, chest heaving, sweat dripping from her brow, her uniform soaked and torn at the edges from the grueling climb. Daniels sat beside her, still trembling but alive, staring at her with a mix of awe and gratitude. Around them, Marines began moving, but not immediately to congratulate. They were stunned, frozen, as if the scene before them had shattered all their expectations. She had done the impossible, and everyone felt it. Slowly, the first voices rose, soft but incredulous. Did she just?" murmured one recruit, eyes wide. A veteran shook his head, muttering, "I've never seen anything like it." Officers hurried forward, scanning Daniels first, then Harper, their faces a mix of shock and admiration. Harper pushed herself up on trembling arms, ignoring the pain radiating through her back and shoulders. She focused instead on Daniels, making sure he was stable before acknowledging the growing crowd. "Private Daniels, are you okay?" she asked, her voice steady, almost calm despite the adrenaline still surging through her veins. Daniels nodded, swallowing hard. "Yeah, thanks to you, Sergeant. I don't know how to His words faltered, but the gratitude in his eyes spoke volumes. Harper offered a small, reassuring smile. "Don't thank me, we do this for each other. That's what Marines do." The statement, simple yet profound, hung in the air. It was more than words. It was a creed, a principle that resonated deeply with everyone present. As the reality of her feat settled in, whispers and murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. Fellow Marines shared glances, nodding silently in recognition. Some whispered incredulously about the sheer strength, endurance, and courage it must have taken. Others were quieter, reflecting on their own training and realizing that Harper had achieved something beyond what most could even imagine. A few skeptics who had doubted her resolve earlier found themselves reassessing their assumptions entirely. Respect replaced doubt, or replaced skepticism. Harper had earned it all without demanding it. Officers moved closer, their expressions a careful mix of astonishment and official concern. "Sergeant Harper," one of them began, voice firm but tinged with disbelief, "that was extraordinary. We'll need a full report on this, but know that your actions today have set a standard for courage and initiative." Harper nodded, wiping sweat from her face. She deflected the praise, focusing instead on the Marine she had saved. "It wasn't just me," she said firmly. "We work as a team. Everyone here matters." Even as the officers spoke, more Marines arrived, drawn by the commotion. Some carried water, others checked Daniels' injuries, and many simply stared, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Harper remained steady, though every muscle in her body screamed for relief. She helped Daniels to a nearby bench, guiding him carefully, her hands steady despite the lingering tremors. Around them, whispers became stories, small retellings of what had happened, punctuated by gasps and exclamations of disbelief. By the time the last of the nearby Marines had gathered, a crowd had formed that stretched halfway down the staircase. Everyone had heard the tale of the impossible climb, and now they had seen it firsthand. The young recruits, previously anxious and unsure, now looked at Harper with a newfound determination. Even seasoned veterans, hardened by years of service, found themselves nodding in quiet admiration. Harper had not only saved a life, but had demonstrated what sheer will, courage, and discipline could achieve. And through it all, Harper remained grounded. She knew that admiration and respect, while gratifying, were secondary to the lesson she wanted to impart. Courage is measured in action, not words, and a Marine never leaves another behind. She stood beside Daniels, letting him catch his breath, while the base slowly began to return to its rhythm, each Marine carrying with them a memory of the impossible feat they had witnessed. That day, Harper's actions had etched themselves into the hearts of everyone present. By evening, the base buzzed with a quiet, electric energy. Harper's impossible feat had spread like wildfire. Soldiers moved with a new sense of purpose, speaking in hushed tones about the sergeant who had pulled a wounded Marine up 200 stairs when everyone else froze. In the mess hall, recruits shared the story in awed whispers, exaggerating each detail in the retelling, while veterans shook their heads in disbelief, muttering, "I've seen a lot in my career, but that was something else." Harper herself kept to the shadows, quietly going about her duties, unbothered by the attention. Some Marines approached her directly, offering quiet thanks or a simple nod of respect. Harper smiled briefly but always deflected the praise. "It's part of the job," she said. "We don't leave anyone behind. That's what Marines do." The phrase, simple yet profound, spread throughout the base faster than any official report could. Even officers, who had initially documented the event for records, found themselves recounting it in informal meetings, highlighting the courage and determination Harper had displayed. The story became more than a single act of heroism. It became a lesson, a rallying point for every Marine on the base. The younger recruits who had previously doubted their own abilities now walked taller. They mimicked her calm focus, training with renewed intensity. "If she can do it," whispered one, "then maybe I can survive the climb too." Veterans, hardened by years of service, watched the surge of morale with quiet pride, recognizing that Harper had achieved what many leaders only hope for. She had inspired action by example rather than orders. Morale soared, unity strengthened, and a sense of collective pride spread through the barracks like wildfire. Even the wounded Daniels, now walking with support, became a symbol of Harper's courage. Marines joked gently with him, laughed at the retelling of his near disaster, and yet every laugh carried reverence for what Harper had accomplished. Harper watched quietly, a subtle smile tugging at her lips. Her act had changed the dynamic of the base. It was no longer just training, just drills. It was a reminder that heroism was possible in the smallest, quietest of moments, and that courage was contagious. The ripple effect reached beyond individual interactions. Officers noted improvements in teamwork during exercises. Marines were more attentive to each other's struggles, more willing to step in when a comrade faltered. Harper's climb became a teaching moment. Discussions of stamina, strategy, and persistence now included the story of a sergeant who refused to give up, who trusted her training, who refused to leave a Marine behind. Every drill, every physical test now carried the unspoken challenge. Could you show the same courage if it mattered? By dusk, the base had taken on a different rhythm. There was an underlying pride, an energy that hadn't existed before the morning's event. Conversations hummed with tales of Harper's climb, and even those who had doubted her capabilities now spoke of her in reverent tones. Her humility made the admiration even more profound. No one needed to ask who she was. Her actions had defined her more clearly than any rank or title ever could. Harper herself continued her rounds, ensuring that each Marine felt seen, cared for, and capable. She trained alongside recruits, demonstrating techniques, adjusting posture, offering advice, but never drawing attention to herself. She understood that true leadership was not about accolades. It was about fostering courage and resilience in others. By evening, the story of her feat had traveled beyond the stairs, beyond the base, inspiring every Marine who heard it. One small act had grown into a movement of morale, determination, and unity. And through it all, Harper remained grounded. She knew that the ripples of her courage would reach far beyond what she could see. Each Marine who carried the story forward would carry a piece of that day with them, embedding a quiet yet unstoppable inspiration into the fabric of the Corps. Harper's heroism wasn't just in the climb. It was in the impact she left on everyone who witnessed it, proving that courage could be contagious, powerful, and enduring. The next morning, the base stirred to its usual rhythm, boots striking the pavement, rifles clattering, voices carrying across the training grounds. Harper moved through the chaos with quiet purpose, unaware of the surprise awaiting her. She had slept little the night before, her body still aching from the impossible climb, but her mind remained sharp. Today was another day of training, another day of duty. She did not expect recognition, nor did she seek it. Heroism in her mind was measured in action, not applause. As she approached the central courtyard, Harper froze mid-step. A ripple of movement stretched across the open space, a formation unlike anything she had seen before. Hundreds of Marines, more than 500, had assembled, standing at attention with precision and respect. Their eyes were fixed on her as she approached, an overwhelming wave of admiration washing over her. She slowed her pace, unsure whether to stop or keep moving, stunned into silence by the magnitude of what she was witnessing. Whispers filled the air. "It's her, Sergeant Harper. She did it. We're here because of her." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, merging into a unified chant of respect echoing across the base. Harper's jaw tightened, a mix of disbelief and humility washing over her. She had never imagined her actions would inspire such a display, yet here they were, hundreds of Marines, young recruits and veterans alike, standing in solidarity, acknowledging her courage. Officers stepped forward, their expressions solemn yet warm. One senior officer held a folder in his hands, glancing briefly at Harper. "Sergeant Harper," he began, voice steady but tinged with awe, "yesterday you demonstrated courage, skill, and determination beyond anything we could have expected. Your actions saved a life and inspired this entire base. Today we recognize your heroism formally." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Harper's eyes scanned the crowd, seeing faces alight with admiration, trust, and respect. Before the officer could continue, Daniels emerged from the crowd, now walking with support from two fellow Marines. He moved toward Harper, his face a mixture of gratitude and pride. "Sergeant, I owe you my life," he said quietly, voice thick with emotion. Harper shook her head, offering a small, humble smile. "You didn't owe me anything. We do this for each other. That's what Marines do." His gaze lingered on her, and she realized that the connection forged during the climb had deepened into something unbreakable. The senior officer extended a small, polished case, revealing a commendation inside. Harper accepted it, keeping her humility intact, though she could feel her heart pounding. Around her, Marines cheered, clapped, and saluted, their voices a chorus of appreciation and unity. Harper's eyes scanned the crowd, noting the mix of emotions, admiration, pride, and inspiration shining on every face. The base had transformed overnight, infused with the energy and morale that her bravery had ignited. Harper's gaze returned to Daniels. "You're walking," she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Don't forget, never let fear stop you from moving forward." Daniels nodded, understanding the unspoken lesson. Courage was measured in action, in choices made under pressure, and in the trust placed in others. As the ceremony concluded, Harper stood quietly, letting the applause wash over her without seeking attention. She realized the true impact of her actions. Her climb had not only saved a life, but had united hundreds of Marines in admiration and respect, instilling confidence and morale across the base. The impossible feat had become a symbol of courage, selflessness, and the unbreakable bonds of the Corps. And though she remained modest, quietly retreating to continue her duties, Harper knew that the ripple effect of her actions had only just begun. The base and everyone in it would carry the memory of her climb for years to come. That evening, the base settled into a quiet rhythm, the sun dipping low behind the distant hills, casting long shadows across the training grounds. Harper walked along the familiar paths, her boots striking the ground with measured steps, yet every muscle still throbbed from yesterday's climb. Her body ached in places she hadn't realized could ache, but it was a satisfying kind of exhaustion, the kind that comes from having faced fear head-on and emerged victorious. She paused near the edge of the obstacle course, gazing at the stairs she had conquered, now bathed in the golden glow of sunset. Daniels approached quietly, leaning on a fellow Marine for support. Harper turned, offering him a small, encouraging smile. "You're doing better," she said softly. He nodded, eyes still wide with lingering awe. I can't thank you enough," he admitted, his voice catching. Harper shook her head, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You don't need to thank me. You held on. That's what made it work. We do this for each other." Her tone was calm, almost matter-of-fact, yet it carried the weight of truth and experience. The two of them sat together for a moment, watching the horizon. Around them, the base was alive with quiet activity, Marines training, officers discussing drills, recruits helping one another. Harper's gaze drifted across the faces of the younger soldiers, nodding their energy, their cautious confidence, and their trust in one another. Her heart swelled with a quiet pride. The climb had been more than a physical challenge. It had become a lesson in courage, endurance, and teamwork, a lesson that would ripple through the base for years to come. Soon other Marines began to gather around Harper and Daniels, drawn by the quiet sense of purpose and respect surrounding them. A group of young recruits approached hesitantly, some smiling nervously, some still in awe. "Sergeant," one began, voice shaky, How did you manage that?" Harper chuckled softly, the sound low and humble. "Focus, training, trust, and refusing to quit, that's all it takes." She emphasized the last part, her eyes meeting each of theirs, silently conveying that courage is not reserved for the strongest, but for those willing to act. Veterans, too, lingered nearby, nodding with approval. Some shared stories of past missions, comparing their own experiences to Harper's climb. There was laughter, there was camaraderie, and there was quiet reverence. Harper listened, occasionally offering advice or correcting a technique, but she never sought attention. Her presence alone commanded respect. Each interaction strengthened bonds, deepened trust, and reminded everyone that leadership was measured not by rank, but by action and character. As night fell, Harper stood alone briefly, reflecting. The climb, the rescue, the cheers, the commendation, they were all significant, yet she realized the true victory lay elsewhere. It was in the confidence she had instilled, in the trust and unity she had reinforced, in the courage that had spread through the base like wildfire. Every Marine she trained, every recruit who had watched her act, carried a piece of that lesson forward. Heroism, she knew, was not just about one moment, it was about its lasting impact. Daniels returned, walking with a little more ease now. "You've changed the base," he said quietly, almost to himself. Harper looked at him and smiled, a warmth in her chest she rarely allowed herself to acknowledge. "We change each other," she replied. "One act, one choice can inspire hundreds. That's what being a Marine is about." As she headed back to her quarters, Harper felt a sense of quiet fulfillment. The climb had tested her body, the rescue had tested her courage, and the recognition had reminded her of the profound bonds that defined her life in the Corps. She knew the story of that day would live on in countless conversations, in training sessions, in the quiet moments when a Marine faced fear. And for Harper, that legacy, the impact she had on her comrades, was far more important than any medal or accolade. Weeks passed, but the memory of Harper's climb remained vivid across the base. Every Marine who had witnessed it carried it in their mind like a silent anthem of courage. Even those stationed elsewhere had heard the story, retold countless times in mess halls, barracks, and training rooms. Harper continued her daily routines, training, mentoring, checking equipment, but the respect and admiration that followed her were unmistakable. Where she walked, conversations paused, eyes followed, and quiet smiles appeared. She moved among her Marines, humble yet resolute, unaware of the full impact of her actions beyond the base. The 200 stairs that had once seemed insurmountable became a symbol. Recruits trained with renewed determination, inspired by her example. Veterans shared her story with new arrivals, emphasizing courage, endurance, and selflessness. Harper's climb became a teaching moment, a demonstration of what it meant to truly serve, to place others above oneself, and to act decisively when lives were at stake. The base felt transformed, not because of orders or regulations, but because one Marine's courage had sparked a chain reaction of inspiration. One evening, Harper walked past the staircase alone, the sun setting in gold and amber over the concrete steps. The memory of Daniels, weight in her arms, the endless grind of the climb, and the cheering faces of the base replayed in her mind. She felt the exhaustion still lingering in her muscles, but also a quiet satisfaction. The climb had tested her body, mind, and spirit, and she had emerged not just victorious, but stronger, with a renewed sense of purpose. The stairs were no longer an obstacle. They were a testament to perseverance, courage, and the bonds that define the Marines. Harper glanced over her shoulder and saw a group of recruits attempting the climb under the watchful eyes of instructors. They struggled, paused, then pushed forward. She smiled quietly, recognizing herself in them, determination, fear, and the will to overcome. She didn't intervene. This was their moment to learn, to grow, to discover the courage that had carried her through the impossible. Each Marine who climbed those stairs carried a piece of her spirit forward, a silent lesson in endurance and selflessness. The ripple effect reached further than Harper had imagined. Word of her feat traveled beyond the base, reaching other units and eventually circulating through official channels. Stories of her bravery were shared during training exercises, lectures, and morale briefings. Young Marines who had never met her knew the name Sergeant Harper. Veterans nodded in respect. Families, hearing tales of her courage, felt pride and reassurance that the Corps was full of individuals willing to go to extraordinary lengths for one another. Harper herself remained humble. She did not seek attention or accolades, though she had earned both in abundance. What mattered to her was the impact, seeing Daniels walking confidently, witnessing recruits pushing themselves further than they thought possible, and knowing that she had inspired courage in every Marine who had watched, heard, or learned of her climb. Heroism, she realized, was not about medals or fame. It was about the lives saved, the trust strengthened, and the example set for others. Late at night, as Harper rested in her quarters, she thought back to that moment atop the 200 stairs. The exhaustion, the fear, the adrenaline, and the triumph, all of it had forged something lasting. She knew that her story would live on, quietly motivating generations of Marines. Courage was contagious, she had proven that. One act of selflessness could ripple through hundreds, even thousands, changing perspectives, inspiring action, and strengthening bonds that no hardship could break. And so Sergeant Harper continued her service, her legend quietly growing with each passing day. The stairs remained a symbol, her climb a reminder, and her impact immeasurable. She had pulled one Marine to safety, but in doing so she had lifted the spirit of an entire corps. Harper's legacy was not defined by a single act, but by the enduring inspiration she left behind, proof that courage, selflessness, and determination could echo far beyond the moment they first appeared.